My own brother stole my daughter's life-saving surgery fund with his girlfriend. Why should your brat matter more than our dream trip? They flew first class to Spain, laughing while my daughter fought for her life. My parents backed him, family shares, everything. I just said, "You'll regret this, sooner than you think," and left. 48 hours later, my phone exploded with 38 missed calls. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd walk away from their entire family. But after what they did to my daughter, it wasn't a choice. It was survival. 3 months ago, I found out my 7-year-old, Emma, would need surgery soon. She'd been born with a heart defect we'd been managing for years, but now it had progressed. Her cardiologist told me we couldn't wait much longer. Her oxygen levels were dropping more frequently, and simple activities left her breathless. I'd been saving every spare cent since the day I became a dad. As a single parent, I knew emergencies like this would come. I cut out everything non-essential, even sold my car, working remote tech support overnight while taking on freelance projects by day. By April, I had just over $43,000 saved, enough for the out-of-network surgery that insurance wouldn't fully cover. That money was in a separate high-yield savings account that I'd set up on my own, though my brother Ryan had helped me research the best rates. Ryan was the golden child. Charming, dramatic, loved taking risks he never paid for. He'd bounce from idea to idea, interior design, podcasting, fashion marketing, never sticking with anything more than a few months. His girlfriend, Michelle, was the same. They lived in a luxury condo downtown, took trips like influencers, and were always manifesting their dream life. 2 weeks before Emma's scheduled procedure, I logged into my account to make the pre-surgery transfer. The balance was $152.88. I refreshed the page 5 times. The last transaction? A $42,890 wire transfer out. I froze. My heart pounded so loud I couldn't hear my own breath. I called the bank. They confirmed it had been transferred using online access through my linked devices. The rep explained that Ryan had used my old laptop, which still had my login credentials saved, and had managed to bypass my security questions using information he knew about me. Banking security wasn't as robust back then as it is now. That night, I drove straight to Ryan's condo. I didn't tell Emma. I told her I was going to get her Gatorade. Michelle answered the door. Behind her, Ryan was laughing, holding a glass of wine. They looked freshly tanned. The sliding doors to their balcony were open, and I saw 2 new Louis Vuitton duffels on the floor. When I asked them about the transfer, Ryan didn't deny it. He barely flinched. He shrugged, took a sip of wine, and said, "Why should your brat matter more than our dream trip?" No apologies. No shame. Just a twisted version of entitlement I didn't even recognize in him. I left that night shaking. Not crying, just cold. Completely detached. And that was when I knew I couldn't beg. I couldn't explain. I couldn't make them care. The next morning, I called my parents. I told them what Ryan had done. They asked if I'd confronted him. I said I had. Then my dad said something that stopped me cold. "You know, we share things in this family. Maybe if you had let him in from the beginning." I hung up mid-sentence. I didn't want to hear it. They'd taken Emma's chance at a normal life and funneled it into a vacation. And somehow, I was the problem. I didn't have time to break down. I had 48 hours to find an alternative. The weight of that deadline pressed down on me like a physical force. Every minute that ticked by felt like another step closer to losing Emma forever. I spent the rest of that day calling everyone I could think of. My old college roommate who'd started his own business, voicemail. My former boss who'd always said I could count on him, awkward silence followed by excuses about cash flow problems. Even reached out to distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, people who barely knew Emma existed. Each rejection felt like another door slamming shut. By evening, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a notepad covered in crossed-out names and phone numbers. The math was brutal and simple. I needed over $40,000 in less than 2 days, and I had exactly $12.42 to my name. The hospital wouldn't budge on the timeline, Emma's condition was deteriorating, and every day we delayed increased the risks exponentially. I remember staring at Emma as she slept on the couch that night, her small chest rising and falling with that slight wheeze that had become more pronounced lately. She'd been so brave through everything, never complaining even when the simplest activities left her winded. She still asked if she could go back to soccer once she felt better, not understanding that without this surgery, she might never run again. The apartment felt suffocating. I stepped out onto the fire escape, the cool night air hitting my face as I tried to think of any option I hadn't considered. Loan sharks crossed my mind briefly. I'd heard stories of desperate parents going to dangerous lengths for their children. But even if I could stomach that route, there wasn't enough time to navigate those waters safely. I thought about starting a GoFundMe, but who would donate $40,000 to a stranger? I wasn't some viral sensation with a compelling backstory that would capture social media's attention. I was just another single dad trying to save his kid, and the internet was full of those stories. That's when I found myself scrolling through old contacts on my phone, people I hadn't thought about in years. And there it was, Diana's number. I'd kept it all this time, buried deep in my contacts list like a secret I couldn't quite bring myself to delete. The history between us was complicated, layered with years of unspoken feelings and missed opportunities. We'd met during my sophomore year of college, both of us studying computer science. She was brilliant, funny, and had this way of explaining complex concepts that made everything click. We spent countless nights in the computer lab, debugging code and arguing about the best programming languages. When I first told her I was going to be a father, the look on her face was something I'll never forget. It wasn't disappointment exactly, but something deeper, like watching a door close on a future she'd been quietly hoping for. Jessica, Emma's mother, had been a whirlwind romance that burned bright and fast. Diana had warned me about her, gently at first, then more insistently as Jessica's true nature became apparent. "She's not ready for this," Diana had said one night as we sat in our usual coffee shop. "Hell, she's not ready for anything real. You deserve someone who'll stick around when things get hard." But I was 22 and stupidly in love, convinced that Jessica just needed time to adjust to the idea of becoming a mother. When Jessica disappeared, leaving nothing but a note saying she wasn't cut out for this life, Diana was the first person I called. She drove 4 hours to be with me, held me while I cried, and helped me figure out how to prepare for single parenthood. Those months before Emma was born were some of the most terrifying and beautiful of my life. Diana was there for everything: ultrasound appointments where she held my hand and helped me pick out baby furniture, late night runs to get whatever weird craving I was having, even Lamaze classes where she served as my coach when I couldn't afford the professional ones. Looking back, I can see how unfair it was to her. She was giving me everything: her time, her emotional energy, her love, while I was still processing the abandonment and preparing for fatherhood. I kept telling myself I was protecting her feelings by maintaining boundaries, but really I was protecting myself from having to deal with the complexity of our relationship when everything else in my life felt chaotic. The breaking point came when Emma was about 6 months old. Diana had been essentially living at my apartment, helping with night feedings and diaper changes, being the co-parent I desperately needed but couldn't acknowledge. One evening, after Emma had finally fallen asleep after hours of colicky crying, Diana and I collapsed on the couch together. "We're good at this," she said quietly, watching Emma sleep in her bassinet. "We make a good team." There was something in her voice, a hopefulness that scared me. I knew what she was suggesting, and part of me wanted it too. But I was drowning in responsibility and grief and fear, and the idea of adding romantic complications to our already complex dynamic felt overwhelming. "Diana," I started, and she immediately knew what was coming. "Don't," she said, standing up abruptly. "Don't give me the speech about how you're not ready or how you need to focus on Emma. I've been here, David. I've been here for everything. I love that little girl like she's my own, and I love you, and I'm tired of pretending that doesn't matter." The conversation that followed was one of the most painful of my life. She was right about everything. She had been there, she did love Emma, and I was using my circumstances as an excuse to avoid dealing with my own feelings. But I was also terrified of messing up the one stable relationship in Emma's life by trying to turn it into something romantic. "I can't risk losing you," I told her. "If we try this and it doesn't work out, Emma loses the closest thing to a mother she's ever had. I can't do that to her." "And what if it does work out?" Diana asked, tears streaming down her face. "What if we could actually be happy? What if Emma could have the family she deserves?" But I was too scared, too convinced that I was destined to screw up anything good in my life. So I pushed her away, gently but firmly, until she finally got tired of waiting for me to be ready for something I might never be ready for. She moved to Portland for a job opportunity about a year later. We tried to stay in touch for Emma's sake, but it was too painful for both of us. The last real conversation we'd had was on Emma's second birthday, when Diana had sent a care package with handmade clothes and toys. I'd called to thank her, and we talked for 2 hours about everything except the elephant in the room. Now, 5 years later, sitting on my fire escape with my daughter's life hanging in the balance, I was about to ask Diana for help I had no right to request. My pride felt like a luxury I couldn't afford, but the shame of reaching out to someone I'd pushed away was almost overwhelming. I started typing the message dozens of times, deleting and restarting as I tried to find the right words. How do you ask someone you've hurt for $40,000? How do you explain that you're desperate enough to swallow 5 years of silence and reach out to the one person who might actually say yes? That night, I sat on the floor with Emma asleep on the couch, and I drafted a message I didn't think I'd ever send. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, someone I'd cut out because of how complicated things got between us. And when she answered, everything started to change. Her name was Diana. We'd been friends in college, best friends, if I'm honest. But things got messy when I got Emma. Diana had feelings for me I couldn't return, at least not back then. I was in love with Emma's mother, Jessica, who disappeared 2 weeks after I told her I was pregnant. Diana stepped up in ways I didn't deserve and couldn't fully appreciate at the time. She was there for doctor's appointments, Lamaze classes, late-night grocery runs. But I kept her at a distance emotionally. I thought I was doing the right thing, not leading her on. Eventually, she moved away, and we lost touch, mostly because I stopped answering. The morning after my sleepless night on the fire escape, I sent the message. My hands were shaking as I typed it, and I must have reread it 50 times before finally hitting send. The response came faster than I expected, but those few minutes of waiting felt like hours. When Diana said she was coming, I didn't know what to expect. Would she be angry? Resentful? Would she help out of pity or genuine care? The uncertainty was almost worse than the crisis itself. I spent the morning cleaning my apartment obsessively, as if having a spotless living room would somehow make up for 5 years of silence. Emma was unusually quiet that morning, picking at her breakfast and asking why I seemed nervous. I tried to explain that an old friend was coming to visit, someone who had known her when she was a baby. She perked up at that, always fascinated by stories from before she could remember. Will she like me? Emma asked, and the question broke my heart. Even at 7, she was already learning to worry about whether she was worthy of love and attention. She's going to adore you, I told her, and I meant it. Diana had loved Emma before she could even walk or talk. There was no way that had changed. When Diana arrived, the first thing that struck me was how much she looked exactly the same, yet completely different. Her hair was shorter, more professional. She wore clothes that spoke of success and stability. But her eyes were the same warm brown I remembered, and when she smiled at Emma, it was like no time had passed at all. You must be Emma, she said, crouching down to Emma's level. I knew you when you were tiny. You used to fall asleep in my arms. Emma, usually shy with strangers, seemed immediately comfortable with Diana. Maybe children can sense when someone genuinely cares about them, or maybe Diana just had that natural way with kids that some people are born with. As Diana and Emma colored together at the kitchen table, I found myself remembering all the reasons I'd fallen for her in the first place. She was patient, funny, and had this way of making even the most mundane activities feel special. Watching her with Emma, I realized how much my daughter had missed by not having Diana in her life. But I also saw the subtle changes that 5 years had wrought. There was a guardedness in Diana's posture, a careful way she spoke that suggested she'd built walls around her heart. I'd hurt her by pushing her away, and while she was here to help, I could tell she wasn't going to make herself vulnerable again easily. Over lunch, while Emma napped, Diana and I finally talked about what had happened between us. She didn't sugarcoat her feelings about how our friendship had ended. I understand why you did it, she said, stirring her coffee slowly. You were scared, overwhelmed, trying to figure out how to be a dad. But it felt like you were saying I wasn't worth the risk. Like our friendship, our connection, was expendable. I wanted to argue, to explain that it hadn't been like that, but the truth was she was right. I had treated our relationship as expendable, and she'd paid the price for my cowardice. I was wrong, I said simply. I was scared of screwing up something good, and instead I threw away something great. I'm sorry. Diana nodded, accepting the apology but not absolving me of the pain I'd caused. I moved to Portland thinking I could start over, forget about you and Emma. But I couldn't. I've thought about you both every day for 5 years. When I got your message about Emma's surgery, I didn't even hesitate. That little girl is part of my heart, whether or not I'm part of her life. The conversation was interrupted by Emma waking up from her nap, but something had shifted between Diana and me. We weren't magically back to where we'd been 5 years ago, but we'd acknowledged the hurt and started the process of healing. That afternoon, Diana insisted on taking Emma to the park while I handled some of the insurance paperwork. Watching them together through the apartment window, I saw Emma laughing for the first time in weeks. She was on the swings, Diana pushing her higher and higher, both of them completely absorbed in the simple joy of the moment. When they came back, Emma was chattering excitedly about how Diana had taught her to do monkey bars and how they'd seen a dog that looked exactly like the one in her favorite book. The normalcy of it, the simple pleasure of watching my daughter be a carefree kid, made me realize how much stress she'd been carrying too. Daddy, can Diana come to the hospital with us tomorrow? Emma asked as we prepared dinner together. I looked at Diana, not wanting to assume. If she wants to, and if it's okay with the doctors. I wouldn't be anywhere else, Diana said, and I believed her. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Diana and I sat on the couch planning for the next day. She'd already called her lawyer, already started the process of making sure the payment would go through smoothly. But more than that, she'd stepped back into our lives like she'd never left, bringing stability and support I hadn't realized I desperately needed. Thank you, I said, and the words felt inadequate. For everything. For coming, for helping, for not hanging up when you got my message. Diana smiled, the first completely unguarded expression I'd seen from her since she'd arrived. Emma's worth it. She's always been worth it. As I watched her gather her things to head back to her hotel, I found myself hoping that somehow, after Emma's surgery, we could find a way to rebuild what we'd lost. Not necessarily romantically, that ship might have sailed, but as friends, as family, as the people who both loved Emma more than anything in the world. But that night, sitting on the floor of my apartment with a dying phone and a sleeping daughter who deserved better, I swallowed every ounce of pride I had left. I messaged her. I'm sorry to ask, but I don't know who else to turn to. My daughter needs surgery. The money I saved was stolen. I just need a loan. Please. She responded within minutes. No questions. Just, where are you? I'm coming. She arrived the next morning. Same old Diana, tired eyes, coffee in hand, flannel over a wrinkled t-shirt, like time had barely touched her. I didn't cry when she hugged me. I couldn't afford to cry. I just stood there, absorbing the warmth of someone who didn't need an explanation to show up. We talked in the kitchen while Emma still slept. I told her everything. The savings. Ryan. The trip. My parents' reaction. She didn't interrupt. Just listened, jaw clenching slowly with every detail. When I finished, she nodded once and said, "I'll cover it. All of it. I'll call my financial advisor. We'll get the hospital payment arranged today." I opened my mouth to protest, to tell her I'd pay her back every cent, but she waved me off. "Don't worry about that yet. Just focus on getting her through this." I didn't deserve this level of kindness. Not after how I'd let our friendship end. But I couldn't deny that she was the only person in my world acting like Emma's life actually mattered. By that afternoon, Diana had arranged for a certified bank transfer to cover the surgery costs. The hospital confirmed receipt of payment. The procedure was back on. That night, while Emma colored quietly on the couch, I scrolled through Instagram. Ryan had posted a reel from Spain. He and Michelle clinked glasses on a rooftop overlooking the ocean. The caption read, "When you take risks, the universe rewards you. #manifested. #no regrets." I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just stared at it for a few minutes and then blocked him. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I still had access to our old family group chat. I hadn't said a word since the fight. They hadn't either. Until that moment, I uploaded a single photo of Emma's hospital paperwork with the timestamp and balance due, $0. Paid. No caption. No explanation. I knew it would be seen. I knew it would spark a reaction. I didn't expect what came next. For almost 24 hours, no one in the family chat responded. Nothing from my parents. Nothing from Ryan. Nothing from the cousins who always chimed in with heart emojis or fake concern. Just silence. And I let it sit. The next day, Emma was prepped for surgery. Diana stayed by my side the whole time, pacing quietly, grabbing coffee, asking smart questions to the surgeons that I was too exhausted to think of. I should have felt panic, but all I felt was stillness. Like the storm had already passed, and all I had to do now was stand in its wake and not collapse. The procedure lasted 3 hours. It went well. When they brought Emma into recovery, she was pale but stable. Those 3 hours in the surgical waiting room were simultaneously the longest and shortest of my life. Diana had brought a bag full of distractions, magazines, a tablet loaded with shows, even a deck of cards, but nothing could quiet the relentless anxiety that gnawed at me with every passing minute. We barely talked. What was there to say? Instead, we existed in a bubble of shared worry, occasionally making eye contact to offer silent reassurance. Diana held my hand during the worst moments, when my imagination ran wild with all the things that could go wrong. Her presence was an anchor, keeping me from drowning in worst-case scenarios. The surgeon, Dr. Martinez, had explained the procedure in detail the day before, but sitting in that waiting room, I couldn't remember any of the technical details. All I could focus on was the percentage of success she'd quoted, 92%. Those were good odds, great odds even, but all I could think about was the 8% chance that my little girl wouldn't wake up. Around the 2-hour mark, a nurse came out to update us. "Everything's going smoothly," she said with practiced compassion. "Dr. Martinez is pleased with how Emma's responding. Probably another hour or so." Diana squeezed my hand tighter. "She's strong," she whispered. "She's got your stubborn streak. She's going to be fine." I wanted to believe her, but the rational part of my brain kept cataloging everything that could still go wrong. Complications from anesthesia. Unexpected bleeding. Rejection of the repair materials. The list was endless and terrifying. "Tell me something about her," Diana said suddenly. "Something from the last 5 years. Something that would make me smile." It took me a moment to shift gears from anxiety to memory, but once I started talking about Emma, the stories came flooding out. I told Diana about Emma's first day of kindergarten, how she'd been so nervous that she'd hidden behind my leg during drop-off, but by pick-up time she was chattering about her new best friend Sarah and couldn't wait to go back. I shared the story of Emma's brief but intense obsession with becoming a paleontologist, how she'd checked out every dinosaur book in the children's library and insisted on wearing her toy hard hat everywhere for 3 months. Diana laughed when I described Emma's excavation of our small backyard, how she dug holes looking for fossils and found an old spoon, which she'd proudly declared was probably from the Jurassic period. "She sounds exactly like I imagined she would," Diana said. "Curious, determined, absolutely fearless." "Well, fearless until it comes to butterflies," I admitted. "For some reason, she's terrified of them. Last summer at the botanical garden, a butterfly landed on her shoulder and she screamed like she was being attacked by a bear." These stories, these glimpses into Emma's personality and growth, seemed to ease something in both of us. This was why we were here, why the surgery mattered so much. Not just to save Emma's life, but to preserve this incredible little person who had so much living left to do. When Dr. Martinez finally emerged from the operating room, still in her scrubs but with a smile on her face, I felt my knees go weak with relief. "The repair went perfectly," she said. "Emma's heart is functioning exactly as we hoped. She's going to have a normal, healthy life." I don't remember much about the immediate aftermath of that news. I think I cried. I know Diana hugged me. The details are blurry, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of relief. My daughter was going to be okay. She was going to grow up, play sports, fall in love, have adventures, live the full life that had been in jeopardy just hours before. When they finally let us into recovery, Emma looked so small and fragile in that hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and tubes. But her color was already better, and when she opened her eyes and saw us both there, she managed a weak smile. "Did it work?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "It worked perfectly," I told her, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "You're going to be able to run and play and do everything you've been wanting to do." Emma's eyes found Diana. "You stayed," she said, and there was such wonder in her voice, as if she couldn't quite believe that this person she just met would care enough to wait through her surgery. "Of course I stayed," Diana said, taking Emma's small hand in hers. "I'll always be here when you need me. That's a promise." Looking at them together, at the easy affection between Diana and my daughter, I felt something shift inside me. For 5 years, I'd convinced myself that I was protecting Emma by keeping our lives simple, by not introducing complications or relationships that might not last. But watching Diana with Emma, seeing how naturally they connected, I realized that I hadn't been protecting my daughter at all. I'd been depriving her of someone who could love her unconditionally. Over the next day and a half, as Emma recovered in the hospital, Diana barely left our side. She helped with the endless stream of medical questions, advocated for Emma when the nursing staff seemed overwhelmed, and entertained my daughter with stories and games during the long stretches of boredom between medical checks. More importantly, she gave me someone to share the responsibility with. For 5 years, every decision about Emma's health, education, and well-being had fallen solely on my shoulders. Having Diana there, someone who cared about Emma as much as I did, was like suddenly being able to breathe after holding my breath for years. The night before Emma was discharged, when she was finally sleeping peacefully without any machines monitoring her vitals, Diana and I talked about the future. "I don't want to lose you again," I said. "Either of you. These past few days, seeing you with Emma, remembering what it felt like to have you in our lives. I can't go back to pretending that doesn't matter." Diana was quiet for a long moment, studying Emma's sleeping face. "I can't do this halfway," she finally said. "I can't be the friend you call when you need something and then disappear from when life gets complicated. If I'm going to be in Emma's life, I need to really be in her life. And that means being in yours too." I knew what she was asking for, and this time, I was ready to give it. Not the romantic relationship we might have had 5 years ago, too much had changed for us to simply pick up where we'd left off, but something deeper and more lasting. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared love for Emma, and the hard-won wisdom that came from surviving loss and learning to trust again. I sat by her side, brushing her hair back, wondering how close I'd come to losing her. That's when my phone started buzzing. It didn't stop. 38 missed calls in less than 2 hours. A dozen from my mom. More from my dad. Even a few from blocked numbers I could guess were Ryan using other people's phones. My cousin Jake messaged. "What did you do?" I muted everything. Later that evening, when Emma finally drifted off to sleep, I checked my email. That's where the second wave hit. Apparently, Diana had done more than arrange payment. Over the next few days, she'd quietly hired a cybersecurity firm and a financial crimes attorney to investigate the theft. I stared at the email attachment in disbelief. The cybersecurity report was thorough, professional, and damning. It detailed every step of Ryan's digital break-in, from the initial password reset attempts to the final wire transfer. They'd even found deleted browser history on his laptop showing research into international money transfer services and luxury travel booking sites. "When did you arrange this?" I asked Diana, who was reading over my shoulder. "Over the past week," she said matter-of-factly. "I know people in the tech industry. Called in a favor. I figured if we were going to do this, we needed to do it right." The report showed that Ryan had used my old laptop, the one I'd lent him months ago when his computer crashed, to access my banking information. He'd saved my passwords in the browser, probably without me realizing it. Then, when he needed money for his Spain trip, he'd simply logged in as if he were me. What made it worse was the timeline. The cybersecurity team had recovered deleted files showing that Ryan and Michelle had been planning this trip for months. They'd known exactly how much money I had saved, and they timed their theft perfectly to coincide with when I'd be most desperate and least likely to involve authorities before Emma's surgery. But Diana had been thinking 3 steps ahead. She hadn't just hired investigators, she'd also consulted with a financial crimes attorney who specialized in family theft cases. The attorney had provided a detailed breakdown of the laws Ryan had broken, not just theft, but identity fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showed Michelle's joint credit card being used for the first-class tickets purchased the same day as the theft. Hotel reservations in Spain were made using the same stolen funds. They'd even used my money to upgrade their rental car to a luxury convertible. What struck me most was how calculated it all was. This wasn't a moment of weakness or desperation. Ryan and Michelle had methodically planned to steal from a sick child, and they'd done it with the kind of cold calculation that made my stomach turn. The attorney had also included a victim impact statement template, explaining how the theft had nearly cost Emma her life. Reading through it, seeing Emma's medical condition reduced to legal language, made the magnitude of Ryan's betrayal even more real. Diana had sent copies of everything to my parents and to law enforcement, but she'd been careful to only share information that was already public record or that directly related to the financial crimes. The evidence was overwhelming and legally sound. The cybersecurity report included social media analysis too. Screenshots of Ryan and Michelle's Instagram stories from Spain, timestamped and geotagged, showing them living it up on my daughter's surgery money. The contrast between their champagne toasts and Emma's hospital bed was stark and undeniable. You didn't just catch them, I realized, looking through all the documentation. You built a case that would hold up in court. I built a case that would make them face consequences, Diana corrected. Whether that's in court or in the court of public opinion was up to them. Every login, every fake password reset request, even the IP address and location history, it was enough to prove identity theft. She also had bank records showing Michelle's joint purchase of first-class tickets, luxury hotels, and international transactions, all with the same funds that had been stolen. Diana sent it all to the police and my parents. The emails went out at exactly 4 p.m., just before they were due to fly home. The timing wasn't accidental. Diana had researched their flight information and calculated exactly when they'd be going through customs, when they'd be most vulnerable and unable to coordinate their response. It was strategic, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Within hours of the email going out, my phone started receiving screenshots from various family members. Someone had created a side-by-side comparison of Emma's hospital bills and Ryan's vacation photos. The images were spreading through family WhatsApp groups, neighborhood social media pages, even Ryan's professional networks. The story had everything people love to hate: privileged people stealing from a sick child, social media bragging about ill-gotten gains, family betrayal of the worst kind. Word spread through our extended family and social circles naturally, without violating any legal boundaries. Diana showed me some of the responses she'd been forwarding. My Aunt Margaret, who'd always been the family diplomat, had sent a message saying simply, "I can't believe what I'm seeing. How could they do this to Emma?" My cousin Jake, who'd grown up with Ryan and always defended him, wrote, "I'm done making excuses for him. This is unforgivable." Even family friends who barely knew Emma were expressing shock and offering support. The community Ryan and Michelle had cultivated, built on their image as successful young influencers, was crumbling as people realized that success had been funded by stealing from a 7-year-old's medical fund. The most damning response came from Michelle's employer. Within a few days of the evidence being shared with authorities, her company had received inquiries about her conduct. After their own internal investigation, she was terminated for violations of their ethics policy. Ryan's consulting clients started pulling their contracts over the following weeks. His gym quietly asked him not to renew his membership. Even their favorite restaurants, places where they'd been regular customers and social media ambassadors, distanced themselves from the association. The digital trail Diana had uncovered wasn't just evidence of a crime, it was a complete dismantling of the life they'd built on other people's money and trust. That was the moment the group chat exploded. My mom finally broke the silence. "You went to the police? This is family. You don't air dirty laundry like that. We could have fixed this privately." My dad added, "This could ruin Ryan's future. He made a mistake, but you're overreacting." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But Diana did, from her own number. "You don't get to talk about ruining futures when you nearly cost a child her life. The only thing that's ruined is your illusion of control. Stay away from them." Then she blocked every number on my behalf, even Jake. I sat there beside Emma, staring at her little hand in mine, and realized how quiet the world had become. Not empty, peaceful. They could scream into the void all they wanted. But I'd already walked away. And they hadn't even begun to feel the consequences. 2 days after the surgery, Emma was stable enough to go home. She was groggy, sore, and soft-spoken, but alive, breathing without effort. That alone was more than enough. Diana drove us back. No words, just music humming through the car. I watched Emma in the rearview mirror, still clutching the stuffed cat she'd held before anesthesia. There was a calm over everything now, one I hadn't felt in years. Until we pulled into my apartment complex. Parked just outside, like they'd been waiting for hours, were my parents. I didn't stop walking. I carried Emma upstairs while Diana followed behind with the discharge papers. They didn't try to block us or yell, they just watched, arms crossed, as if waiting for their cue. 20 minutes later, a knock echoed through the door. Diana answered. My mom's voice was low but sharp. "We need to talk to him." "Alone?" I came to the door, but I didn't step out. I didn't even let them in. They launched into it, how Ryan was terrified, and not himself, how jail would ruin him, how they should have handled it as a family. Apparently, Michelle had already flown back to avoid police questioning. Ryan was being contacted by investigators. Their accounts were under review. They wanted me to call it off, drop the charges, make a statement saying it was a misunderstanding. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at them, just past them at the hallway. Finally, my mom whispered, "We raised you better than this." And I answered, quietly, "No. You raised me to stay silent. That's over now." Then I shut the door. Later that night, Ryan posted a video to his story. He was crying. Rambling about cancel culture, how everyone's out to destroy strong men, and how jealousy makes family do cruel things. It didn't land the way he thought it would. The comments turned fast. Old friends, even influencers he'd networked with, started unfollowing. Screenshots of his lavish trip circulated on social media alongside news reports about the theft. Someone even posted a compilation of his tone-deaf quotes from previous stories. The damage was done. Within 72 hours, Ryan had wiped his socials. Michelle's employer issued a statement distancing themselves. And my parents? The social fallout in their community was swift and lasting. They stopped attending their usual social events, unable to face the whispers and questions. They didn't call again. Not once. The noise faded. Life got quiet. And that quiet? That was the sound of peace. Emma recovered. She went back to school 3 weeks later. Diana stayed. Slowly, we relearned each other. Not as an apology, but as something new. Something honest. And me? I kept every receipt, every screenshot, every message. Because when people show you who they really are, believe them. And if they ever try to come back? I'll let the evidence knock on the door for me. If this story hit you like it hit me, if you felt that mix of heartbreak, rage, and satisfaction, don't forget to like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that go deep and don't hold back. Your support helps these real feeling narratives reach more people who need to hear them. And hey, what would you have done if your own family betrayed you like this? Let's talk in the comments.